Hello everyone. Last video I talked about the changes made from the books to the show. To be more specific, episode 1, and gave you all some much needed context. So now we're going to be looking at how things have changed from the books to episode 2 and how that affects or improves on the story. In the books, when the Grisha examiners come to test the children in the Duke's estate that doubled as an orphanage for the war orphans, Mal and Alina were the only children around. This was a situation that clearly further strengthened their bond because no other children were present. Also in the books, it's one of the Grisha that actually informs Alina and Mal that whichever one of them is found to be Grisha, that person will be taken away to a better life, which would involve better accommodation, better clothes, better food. Clearly, the child will be well taken care of. Now, one would say they said that in order to paint a picture for why the children should wish to be Grisha. However, this had the opposite effect as Mal and Alina instead silently decided to resist, and Alina's sun summoner powers were dampened and laid dormant in that moment. It's relevant because that action is crucial to her development and the realization she has later in the books. In the show, however, things are handled a little different. It's the other children who are gleefully gossiping about becoming Grisha that break the news. And the mention about not being tested as a Grisha if you're injured wasn't really something that was mentioned in the book either. Also, the show having younger Mal even consider being tested is a marked contrast to book Mal, who could not stand the Grisha at all. This difference might end up playing a very important role in how the rest of the story plays out. But I do think the show loses something important in the way it plays things out, because here Alina hides away from being discovered and having to take the test, whereas in the books she does take the test but pushes her powers so far down that they do not awaken when she's tested. That action, I feel, speaks more to the length Alina is willing to go to stay with Mal with regards to powers that I feel the show should have captured, because once again that is relevant later in the book. After the skiff returns to the port, in the books Alina, Mal and everyone else that survived the trip into the fold were all brought in to see the Darkling, who then took turns questioning them, from the soldiers to the senior cartographer who survived to Mal, before finally turning to Alina. It was the senior cartographer who saw Alina emit light and admitted as such. Mal, on the other hand, insisted that it wasn't Alina. Zoya wasn't on the skiff in the books. In fact, she was one of the Grisha who laughed at how ludicrous Alina being a sun summoner was. In the show, however, Alina is the only cartographer who survived, and we see her clearly suffering from survivor's guilt because the other cartographers would have survived if she hadn't burned the map and forced a supervisor's hands. She's also the only one brought in to see the Darkling alongside some soldiers, one of whom pointed her out as the source of the searing light that Zoya saw at the helm of the skiff. In the books, there was no sexy clawed ring used by General Kerrigan. Instead, he used a knife, way less sexy and intimate, but the end result was the same. Light poured out of Alina when she was cut. Although it is important to note that he first tried calling out her power using his own powers, which is darkness, a play on light responding to darkness and vice versa, but Alina resisted. It was the cutting, however, that was her undoing. Like I stated in the previous episode, everything with the Ketterdam crew is a prequel that didn't happen in the books. This includes the meeting with Poppy, everything that happened with the conductor and Inej, handing Eileen the documents to the Crow Club. None of that happened in the books. And so, Pekka's first interaction with Kaz doesn't involve him holding him by his cane as he threatens to kill him. It does threaten to kill him. You will come to realize that Kaz Brekker lives by a lot of threats to his personhood, but Pekka Rollins doesn't use Kaz's cane. Kaz also doesn't ask him if he remembers him or a deal they had until way later in the books. This is something that is clearly brought in to establish the animosity that Kaz feels towards Pekka and to give the sense that there's so much more to it that Kaz isn't letting on, which is also confirmed with the conversation between Inej and Jesper, where she informs Jesper that she thinks Kaz has vengeance on his mind when he relates to Pekka Rollins, with Grisha giving Kaz only 6 hours to come up with a plan on how to safely cross the fold. Kaz is without options, thinking of a way to solve the mystery like he always does, until he's told of the conductor, someone who helps others cross in a contraption that keeps them safe in the fold. There is no mention of the conductor in the books. This is purely show canon, although there is another character who does build contraptions to explore the fold. That character is Stromhound. In the books, when Ivan, the Grisha who Alina talks to in the show, puts her in the carriage, there is no sense of Mal chasing after her on a wounded leg, desperate to catch up with her. All he did was look confused and very pale because of his injury. Show Mal actually puts in the work. You can tell his earnestness, his desperation to catch her. All of this once again contributes to the fact that Mal really does love Alina, and the show reveals this very early on. That is not to say that he might not have ran after her in the books, but as at when Alina looks back, the book has him staring at her in shock as she's driven away. In the show, when she looks back, she sees him running after her. Finally, in the book, Inej isn't looking for a sibling. Instead, she was looking to be reunited with her parents, who she was separated from when she was stolen from their wagon. The brother that is mentioned in the show is show canon only.